A detective named Hollis is at a fertility clinic to make a sperm donation. But when the doctor checks his test results, she tells Hollis that he is infertile. He asks if he has always been sterile, and the doctor says yes. This makes Hollis shocked. It turns out that Detective Hollis is already a father to 2 children. He gets interrupted by his fellow officer and says a man is about to jump off a building. The man's name is Gavin. The detective tries to calm him down and asks him a few questions. Gavin says he needs to do it, and Hollis concludes that Gavin is not up there by choice. Gavin says he has to stay up there until noon before jumping, and if he doesn't, someone else is gonna die. Seeing that he's still got more than an hour, Gavin narrates his story. It starts at the apartment building where Gavin sees a new couple has moved in. The woman's name is Shauna, and they got to ride on the same bus and get to smile at each other. Gavin works as a hotel manager, and a while later, Shauna arrives, applying for a job as hotel staff. After just a short interview, he tells her to start right away. Gavin later tells his gay friend Chris about the new girl. With the coincidence that they are neighbors and work together, Chris says that she might be his destiny. Gavin rejects the idea and says she is married. A while later, the couple knocks on his apartment, and the husband Joe introduces himself. He invites the two for a dinner sometime, and they gladly accept. One evening, the two arrive at the couple's apartment. Joe asks his wife to get wine, and Gavin goes to the kitchen to help and chat with Shauna. Thinking that the two has a gay relationship, Joe prays for them, calling it an abomination. Gavin gets insulted and walks out. It turns out, the couple are born-again fundamentalists. At the hotel, Shauna apologizes for last night, and Gavin invites her for lunch. Shauna shares her childhood, how she grew up with an abusive father. When Gavin offers her drink, he is shocked because she can open it with her teeth, indicating she's a drinker despite her demure behavior. They talk about his gay friend Chris, and Shauna learns that Gavin took him in when he got kicked out of his job because his boss found out he's HIV positive. Shauna seems impressed with him. Back to present, Hollis receives a phone call from his wife Angela, and he hangs it up. He then gets a flashback to that morning when the children run to greet him. He then proceeds to confront his wife, asking whose kids are they. He's mad because for years he has been led to believe they are his kids. Hollis then goes back to Gavin, and he continues his story. Joe apologizes to Gavin and says he thought he was gay, but then he remarks that if his friend does not change, he will go to hell. Gavin says they should talk about homosexuals and hell next time because he's late for work, and Joe invites him Wednesday night. On the bus, Gavin reveals to Shauna that he used to be married too, but then his wife left him. He starts to flirt with her, but then she reminds him she's married. It's Wednesday night, and Joe starts to preach Gavin their religion. As an atheist, Gavin thinks it's ridiculous that the born-again people are the only ones who will be saved, pointing out that if a kid in China gets hit by a bus, never hearing about their religion, could go straight to hell. And Joe says that it's the reason why it is important to spread the gospel. Their argument heats up, and they start yelling at each other. Shauna interrupts and asks Gavin to leave. She tries to talk to her husband, but he tells her to go out. The next day, Shauna shares to Gavin that she once was a drug addict who became a call girl. One day, her pimp sent her to a man who likes to do it in churches. After using her, the man beat Shauna until she could barely walk. The next morning, Joe found her and took her to the hospital. Shauna says she owes her life to him. She then asks Gavin to stay away from her, which he sadly accepts. 3 weeks later, Shauna sees Gavin comforting one of the staffs who is mourning for her father's death, and she seems impressed with him. That evening while Gavin is smoking outside the apartment, Shauna joins him and starts smoking too. He invites her to watch the stars with him, and after a few chats, he kisses her. But then, Shauna stops him, and she leaves. Joe sees her outside late at night and he gets suspicious. The next day, Shauna goes to Gavin's office and makes out with him, but someone knocks, so he tells her that he'll arrange a hotel room and will email her. While Shauna is taking a bath, Joe reads the email. Luckily, Gavin used the email of a previous employee, so Joe has no idea it is him. Shauna tells Joe that she has to fill in for someone in the hotel, so she has to leave. She later arrives at the room where Gavin has been waiting. Unbeknownst to Shauna, Joe has followed her. The two later make love, and when Shauna leaves the room, Joe sees her kissing a man, but couldn't figure out who it is. The next day, Gavin asks Shauna to leave her husband, and she says she feels both scared and sorry for Joe. But then Shauna says she starts to become estranged with him, and all she thinks about is Gavin. He says he feels the same way. That evening, Joe has to leave for a church matter. When he left, Shauna proceeds to Gavin's room, without knowing that Joe is just hiding nearby. The two make love, and Joe is heartbroken as he listens through the door. After making love, Gavin reveals that he had a daughter who died 2 years ago. He blamed himself for it because he was with her in the car when it happened. A truck is about to hit them, and Gavin swung the wheel the wrong way, and the truck hit her side. His wife couldn't forgive him, and that's why they split up. Back to the present, Hollis admits that his wife cheated on him, and he just found out that her children are not his, because he is sterile. The detective says they tried many times, but failed to have kids. And when they get tested, he didn't bother to see the result, because his wife told him that everything was okay. Months later, they had a child. His wife wanted the kids to still look like him, so she made an arrangement with Hollis' own brother. The detective is crying as he is saying this, and he asks Gavin to come inside already. But then Gavin says he wanted to, but he just can't. They then get interrupted by another officer, and they seem to have found out about Joe and Shauna, but they could not find the two. Gavin later continues his story. They are planning to tell Joe the truth, but Shauna wants to tell their pastor first. Joe sees them this time kissing. He books a room at the hotel, and while Shauna is doing her night shift, she is shocked to see her husband. The next day, Joe invites Gavin to their apartment. He reveals that he was been married before, and had 2 children. He also used to be a substance abuser, and do all kinds of sinful things. He lost his job, while his wife and children left him. He was in complete hopelessness, until he stumbled into a church and became born again. He felt saved, and since he already got everything, Joe believes that God gave Shauna for him to take care. He says he has pure love for her, until he heard them making love at Gavin's apartment. Joe almost killed himself, but then he realized that he's the last person that should die. Pointing a gun at him, Joe makes Gavin read a Bible passage, which says the man that commit adultery with another man's wife, both the adulterer and adulteress shall surely be put to death. But then Gavin rebuts with the story from New Testament where Jesus saves an adulteress, by telling the men that only the ones who never made a sin can cast a stone on her. Joe then lets him go. Gavin tries to call Shauna, but it is Joe who answers. He has decided that he's more of an Old Testament guy, but instead of killing both of them, he says only one of them has to die. He tells Gavin that he has his wife at gunpoint, and he will shoot her at noon if Gavin does not jump off a building. Hollis tells Gavin that if he had just told him from the start, he could have found Joe. Gavin says he could have killed her. He then tells Hollis to forgive his wife just for the sake of the kids. He adds that his wife has only done it because she does not want to lose him. Joe and his wife are right across, and they can see Gavin at the top of the building. Few minutes left, and Hollis is begging him to climb back up. Gavin asks the detective to tell Shauna that he loves her. He takes one last look at his daughter's picture, thinking that he does not want the same thing to happen to Shauna. He kisses the picture when the bell rings, and then he jumps. Everyone is aghast as they see him drop on the road. Just moments later, the police find Joe and Shauna in the hotel room, and they arrest him. At the station, Hollis tells Shauna that Gavin loves her, and she thanks him. When she is about to head out, she dreadfully looks at her husband who is praying in a jail cell. Then she leaves. That evening, Detective Hollis is in his car crying, as he stares at his family inside the house. He later decides to get inside, and he is greeted by his children. They dine together, and Hollis seems ready to forgive his wife. Did you like our movie recap? Please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. To be updated for new movie recaps, hit the notification bell.